Hi, and we're going to look at Psalms 19 today. It's a simple song, but it's very beautiful. It is not one of the Psalms that we've looked at that have begun with iniquity and end with the righteousness of God, where he's calling out to God. This one is a nice pastoral. It's like sitting on a hillside looking up into the sky. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day and night uttering speech, and night unto night showing knowledge. The idea that here's a man who's been out in the fields for days and nights and really stops to look around and sees the wonder of what God has created. There is no speech nor language where the voice is not heard. The line has gone out through all the earth, and the words to the end of the world. In them he set a tabernacle for the sun. The idea of getting out there, staying all night, and then watching the sun rise in the morning, like a man coming out of a tabernacle. Where the bridegroom, it's like a bridegroom coming out of his chambers and rejoices like a strong man running a race. The imagery here is strong and it's passionate for God. This is one of the reasons why he is known as a man who is the apple of God's eye. This is the man that God would use as an example of what Messiah would be. He from the line of David. You're the son of David. You're like David. You're the apple of my eye. You're cherished. You're my delight. He says, the fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous. They are to be desired. Are they more than gold? Yeah, more than fine gold, sweeter than honey in the honeycomb. Again, the imagery here, where he's pulling upon things in nature. I do like at the very end where he says, keep thy servant from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over him, that I might be upright and I might be innocent from the great transgressions. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Sometimes we as Christians, we want to be good for goodness sakes or good for our witness, but he's wanting to be good for God. And so he's wanting to keep away even from the presumptuous sins, from the little sins, from the stuff that maybe, don't seem that bad. But he wants to see as pure and clean as he can. Not that he is justifiable to God, but that he's already been justified by God. So it's a very beautiful psalm, Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God. When we go back to, we're at Genesis 37, and this is, we're talking about Jacob. Now, we're talking about Joseph, so Jacob's son through Rachel, that Jacob has dwelled in Canaan, and he's lived there, and Joseph was 17 years old, and he lived among his brothers, and his dad loved him, gave him a coat of many colors. We've heard the story. I won't go too deep into it. And his brothers started hating him more because his dad seemed to love him more. And he told them some dreams. He said, behold, I saw that we were all binding sheaves, and my sheaf stood upright, and all of your sheaves bowed down before me. And his brother said, will you indeed reign over us? Then he told him another dream. And he said that I saw the sun and the moon and 11 stars, and they made obseisance to me. They bowed before me. He told it to his father and to his brother, and his father rebuked him. What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Am I and my son and my brethren indeed come to bow down before thee? And the brother envied him, but his father observed the saying. The idea that he was sharing these dreams that they would bow before him. So the brothers had gone off to take some sheep out into the field, and he sends Joseph out to see his brothers and see what they're doing. And he goes, and he may have traveled a good 20 miles to get to where they were. And when he gets there, the brothers decide that they're going to get rid of him. First, they decide to kill him. Then they decide, no. Reuben steps in and says, no, let's not kill him. We'll pretend that he's dead. We'll take this coat and wrap it in blood of a lamb or something, which is ironic. And then he threw him into a pit. And you get the idea when he was in this pit that he was screaming and yelling. And I mean, he's 17 years old. He's still kind of a kid. And his brothers that are supposed to have loved him have thrown him into this pit. Reuben's plan was to go and rescue him. Reuben was the oldest son. He would have been probably closer to 30 by this time. But the other boys had decided, but before Reuben could have his plan go through, some Ishmaelites were coming through on their way, and they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites. They sold him into slavery. And Reuben returned and to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not there. And they returned unto his brethren and said, the child is not there, and whither shall I go? And they took Joseph's blood and killed the kid of the goats. Okay, it was goat's blood. And dipped the coat into the blood. And they put the coat of many colors and brought it before their father. Now, this is kind of cruel. Here's a man who loves the son, and they're going to push this con on. And if they push this con on, they've got to see it through. You've got, 11 guys here going to stand in conspiracy and know the truth about what happened and keep silent for years. And they watched their dad, Jacob, rent his clothes and put sackcloth upon his loins and mourn for many days. You're watching this man going through mourning. Something you've caused, and you're doing this. I mean, there's a real hard-heartedness that we're seeing in this sons of Israel right here. And he rent his clothes and mourned for many days, and all the sons and daughters rose to comfort him, but he would not. I will go down to my grave unto my son mourning. And the Midianites sold him to a fellow named Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and a captain of the guard. Now, so God is placing Joseph in a very strategic place in Egypt. But here's in the story, his parents think he's dead. His brothers have given him up for dead. He's pretty much on his own, just him and God. We have an interesting interlude here, which will come out to play later. And it shows a little bit of how God is planning the Messianic line. Judah, which is the third son of Israel, through Leah, that he had come down and he had taken a woman, and she was going to be a son. She's going to be a wife to one of his sons and bear him an heir. So first he had covenanted her to his first son, but died, and then he covenanted his son to Onan, his second son, but Onan died, and then Judah was going to save him for his third son so that he might sire a son. But the third son was so young and the woman was much older that there was going to be a large time frame before he could have these two get married to continue the line. And Onan was the one that did not want to pass on seed. His brother had died, and he didn't want to pass on seed in his brother's name. He wanted seed of his own. And God killed him for not fulfilling the duties that he had, because God wanted the Messianic line to come through the first son. And then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at thy father's house till Selah, my son, is grown, lest peradventure. And Tamar went down. And in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted and went up unto his sheep shears at Timnah, he and his brother and his friend Hirah the Edomite. And it was and he told Tamar, saying, behold, thy father goes up to Timnah. Now, there's an interesting cultural thing here that I'm not really understanding, because we're looking back, again, 2,000 years. They're on their way, and the relationship these cultures seem to have with prostitution and with how they can, the social, cultural laws. I mean, we were discussing this earlier with Abimelech, how that if you killed a man to take the wife, that was okay, but you couldn't sleep with another man's wife. It's like, well, how does that work? Here, it's looking at this time that prostitution was legal. I mean, the idea that there were no policemen, there were no governors, people kind of lived in groups and kind of made up their own rules. And it seemed like the rules between the groups were just open to anybody. So it would seem like that some people, prostitution would happen within these places. Again, we think in governments and we think in larger bodies of governing structures. Here it was little bitty groups making their own little laws. So prostitution was allowed. He was upset by the death of his wife. So he saw this woman sitting by the road. Now, Tamar didn't want to wait for Selah. So she decides to go, and she dresses up as a prostitute. She covers her face. She sits in the way. And as he comes along, he asks her what her hire would be. So she said that the hire would be your staff, and I think there was a signet ring and some bracelets. So he gave it to her, and therefore the business contract was taken care of. And then she rose up and went away, laid her veil, and put her garments down. Judah was going to send a kid to her. That was the pledge, that he would get his stuff back. So she was holding his stuff till he sent her a kid to pay for the axe. So he sends it by a friend of hers, but they can't find who the woman was. And then they ask around and say, well, where's the prostitute that's sitting by the way? And they said, we don't know of any prostitutes that are sitting in the way. And then friend of his brought it back to Judah and told Judah, I can't find her. And Judah's like, well, I guess that's that. Later on, it's come to find out that Tamar, they're saying, is playing the harlot. Now she's pregnant, and they get all upset about it. And they bring her in, and when she was brought forth, she looked at her father-in-law, saying, by the man of whom these is, I am with child. Discern, I pray thee. And she brings out the signet ring and the bracelets and the staff. And Judah acknowledges and says, you are more righteous than I, because I gave her not to Selah my son. Oh, I forgot that little part. He gives Selah to another woman, or another woman to her. So he is not fulfilling his obligation to Tamar. See, Tamar had actually wed her, had not gotten pregnant. So she was already in the family. He was known as her father-in-law. And so he had not fulfilled his covenant promise to her that he would give her to Selah, and said he gave another woman to Selah. So she was going to be without. And so she does this thing with the prostitute, and now she's pregnant by his child. And she says that she is more righteous than I, because I gave her not to Selah my son. And it came to pass at the time to travail, there were twins in her womb. And she travailed, and so she had twins. One was named Perez, and the other one was named Zerah. Now, if you look at Matthew 1, you'll mention that Judah, Tamar, Perez, and Zerah are mentioned in Matthew 1. I'm going to look back and see if Zerah is there. But anyway, Perez is mentioned there. And once again, God is moving for the Messianic line. And we're seeing two things happening at one time, is where I'm trying to go with this. You see the promise, and then you see also the Messianic line. He gave the promise to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then you're going to have Jacob start handing the promises down later on to his sons. And at the same time, he's holding a line pure. It's from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and now because the first son had been with the concubine, and the next two sons had participated in what happened at Shechem, Judah was next in line for the Messianic line. And he's wanting to push this through Judah. And we'll see that Jesus is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So we see that here, and it goes through Tamar, Perez, and then on we go. So we see a connection here. Some of these stories aren't here just to be filler or to pass time, but they're showing how God is very carefully holding on to two things at one time. He's holding on to the promise, and he's holding on to the Messianic line, and both of these will come together as Jesus. So we get caught up in our cultural, prostitution's bad, prostitution's bad. Yes, I agree, prostitution is bad. But when we're looking at this culture, remember, you got to take yourself out of our 21st century mindset and put it there where there's no one telling people how to run their household. One group can be running with good, strong laws. Another group can be hateful and mean and violent. And there's nobody telling both groups what to do. This is why God wanted to be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He wanted to establish a nation. And by that nation, all the people who wanted to come to the God of Elohim, the God of the Creator, the God who is their Creator, can come to him through, and later on, Messiah would come down and be their king. Sounds a little complex. But right now, the simple thing is that to hold on to these two things, we're fighting back and forth. We want to make sure the promise goes through. We want to make sure that the Messianic line is going straight along. So anyway, that is 37 and 38. I find it real interesting. Thank you. Have a good day.